morning, good morning, good morning. Um, it's funny, I've run out of my natural medication, and one of the things that happens when that happens, I find it far harder to move, like especially my kind of from the waist down, where I've had lots of issues for a long time. So yeah, almost as soon as I have that, I start moving, and if I don't have it, I kind of start um, just deteriorating, like going down this thing. It just starts atrophying mentally and physically, which is strange. And one of the other things that happens is I start dreaming, having these really intense dreams. And the dream that woke me up this morning was, weirdly, I was with Hugh Jackman, and we weren't really hunting, but we were kind of hunting, and they were kind of like buffalo, but also like cows, and kind of also like sheep. You know what dreams are like? They're not specific. But I ended up, it was kind of an adolescent cow or sheep or whatever it was, and ended up having to kill it. And this is something I've done. And then I woke up and just kind of was filled with these thoughts, and connected to all these other things. And it's something because I've done permaculture and looked into different livestock, things like that. I've never had the thing to go vegan or vegetarian, because I went through the ethical kind of framework to find out where my ethics lie in consuming meat. And then that was like it's probably like 10 years ago, and kind of went through this thing of being very connected, and ended up doing that, and would kind of happily do that. And something about this dream, it split up all this abstraction to do with a lot of things going on in our world right now. And I think this disconnection from, say, how our meat or how our food is consumed, because basically, unless you're consuming your own garden's produce and you're vegan that way, you're in the same phenomenon. You're disconnected from your food supply, and that food supply has blood all over it. And in a lot of cases, like human blood, because it dispossesses humans, or it enslaves humans, or it treats them unfairly, or there's a million different things. It amplifies a global market system that prices millions of people out of the access to food, which is the craziest thing of all. And I think there's a few things that kind of weirdly connected this. My oldest son has just got his driver's license, and it's a bit of a big deal. It's, as a father, it's both great and a little bit scary. There was lots of people I grew up with that died in motor vehicle accidents, including my brother. He wasn't driving, but he was killed by a car. And so it's this weird, like I love it. It's this moment of independence, and I kind of went through it and I went, right. It's interesting that we have this process of getting a license for this, and that we obviously hold it up as a responsibility that requires that little bit extra, and that's gotten harder and harder and harder. I think it's like 50 hours driving you have to do before you get your Ps now. And this is all good. And then it brought it back to this animal. And I was thinking, I started thinking how many things that this allowance of this kind of false persecution based on my online activity, which is what's happened, and it's very new and it's very scary. The amount of things this has affected in the development of my children's lives because of their removal of their father. And I started thinking about all the things that have led me to go down these alleyways and think about these things in a different way. What exactly was it? Was it guilt? Was it that did I have guilt to do with my heritage on this land, that clearly had a history that wasn't being celebrated? Did that lead me down this path to discover solutions on this land base, and has, say, their mother who doesn't have that same history on this land base and they have a history of dispossession? Is this a completely different thing? And why? How are we going to add this all up without some type of licensing when this is not even considered an issue? And we're not talking about potentially running over someone's curb or hitting a granny, or the worst case, hitting a kid on a scooter. We're talking about millions and millions and millions of acres of land with no license down to understand the actual impact you're having, not just on that land, but on the people of that land. And this seems like insanity to me. We have, and it's going to end with probably the bloodiest war at some stage in the history of war, because we have a disconnected system that is being propped up purely by marketing at this stage. And unlicensed individuals that have no understanding of the entire system that they're operating on top of. They're narrowing down to just basically, as far as I can see, just keeping the fucking daydream going, just keeping the delusion going, with like little call outs to climate change. And I think this is a travesty. If you haven't personally killed and eaten an animal, or built a structure to save yourself in the rain, or been alone in the wilderness for a certain amount of time, or been, had any of these experiences, you're like a circus. What are they called? What's the person called? The ringmaster of a circus. That, see, in the past, a lot of these things we didn't know, but now we know them. So we've almost been on this evolutionary thing to that's all old-fashioned stuff. You know what I mean? That's all tribal kind of Stone Age things, and we're doing this now. But now it's no, it's not. Vital parts of humanity, and you're just disregarding them to continue on this kind of festival daydream fucking fantasy. And all of this came from a dream about the sacrifice of an animal. Something that used to be pivotal to our societies. Something that I actually then, and I haven't got long, but I'll say it. That's what Jesus was. Jesus was the sacrificed man that we've kind of been pondering on. And I think we're hitting that moment. It's why did we sacrifice a man? Because that's what we're doing. And who did we sacrifice? Sacrifice the Son of God. It's well, why is that horrific? Because it's a big fucking red flag. It's a big flashing signal that's saying, hey, we need to fix something. We've gone wrong. To be connected to it, and that's why it's constantly there. I'll do a second one. Um, yeah, and I think this. I mean, there's two ways. You either go right, it's just all actual divine, and I do this as well. I seem to do both. I always go, well, it's all absolute God's will and it's divine, and then it's also I'm like also think about it kind of rationally. What's going on in our psyches? And I think what happened is this, for whatever reason, this particular story or event resonated. I think like a lot of things, we didn't get the whole thing all at once. And I think it actually led to, strangely, like a little bit of an escalation, almost like, well, if you take kind of what it was in conflict with like pagan Rome, there was a lot of animal sacrifice in pagan Rome. And obviously this event was the sacrifice of a man, which happened all the time as well. But this one broke through because I think it's a little bit like, I like to imagine it in a weird way. I like to imagine it as someone, if you think it like, my dad used to call them do-gooders. And I've experienced this. This is why I'm constantly in conflict with trying not to be a do-gooder. That's why I put on like a coarse thing and try and be a bit of a dickhead and try and be a bit of a fucking, rather than a like just snowflake fucking rainbows, because I think it's more digestible in a different way. And I think you can almost get to like, it's quite common to get aggravated by people that are trying to do good. And I think there's suspicion. I'm always a bit suspicious. I think everyone is. You're like, what are you fucking doing there? Fucking, who do you think you are? Fucking Mr. Goody Two Shoes. Hey, I fucking see through your masquerade. And then I think maybe the Christian story is a little bit like this happened and then like they killed him, and then there's always that bit of doubt. It's like, well, I hope he wasn't the fucking son of God. And I think that's that face that is pulled like, I hope he wasn't the son of God. I think we've had 2,000 years of that and kind of going like, maybe he was right. Maybe like... Yeah. And so rather than the gory display of human sacrifice, which I think was almost celebrated, this is almost like UFC. If you think of someone getting knocked out and beaten and bloodied, you're like, yeah, because they talk a lot of shit. It's like, yeah, showed you, didn't you, you fucking arrogant bastard. Whereas I think the thing of Jesus is he's kind of like, he's kind of just, I'm doing this, it's really good, you're all going to kill me, and then this is going to lead to this. And he was right. And so you kind of like, fuck, damn it. And then everyone's kind of pretending that they didn't. And everyone around, this is the greatest thing I think of all Christians actually think that they wouldn't have killed Jesus, when it's like, statistically, you would have been cheering him on to be killed. And I just wish that's how I view Christianity, from that perspective, from a deeper, like, yeah, I probably would have killed him. And that's the point he was making. And it still means he's right. And I still learn from that. Do you know what I mean? And it's not like that's the lesson. If we all just go, the lesson was for us to all be good and not kill him, it never would have happened, and it's not going to happen. The lesson is kind of that, no, you will kill him. And you need to figure that out. You need to make peace with that. The fact that this humanity on the land will kill the Savior. It's like, why? And this is like, I think everything. Like, we're doing it now. We're killing reality by chasing a daydream, by chasing fantasy. Like, if I take most Australians, I'll say about Australia because I'm there. I'm not talking poverty, I'm talking the average Australian, okay? And I see you all. I can see you all kind of crying poor and poor me and all this, and then living like a fucking rock star. In any other period in time, this is how you live. And not doing this equation. Just perpetually living in, I'm poor, yet living like the highest level person. I have 24-hour entertainment with anything I want, whenever I want, for basically nothing. I live in a fucking climate control. I have a fucking, like, robotic horse that can take me anywhere at the speed of fucking craziness, and I jump in this interconnected system of food and entertainment and sex and it's like, come on now. What the fuck's going on here? And still, I think it's what makes it the most horrific. Like, I was thrown in jail to defend that illusion. And no one can tell me it's not. And it's not even against, like, I'm trying to get to this point where I'm like, it's okay. You just don't, like, no one's fooled by this woe is me shit if you're an Australian person. Unless you're, extremely physically disabled, or you've like been eaten by a crocodile or something. Like, no, most of the people in our society are doing pretty well. They might be in debt, but a lot of that debt's like imposed debt. There's other ways, there's all this shit. And this is what I fucking did it. I experimented with it. And I'm at this point now, it's honestly easier for me to just leave. If I'm not, because it's more painful to me to not get my point across to these things. And this is why I'm kind of saying we need a license. Because it's like, I've got my license. I spent 15 years figuring out the shit. I've got my license. I'm putting through relative information, and that's being disregarded, but we have university degree breakdancing who aren't very good breakdancers in the Olympics. And then we're all being like coaxed to celebrate that, like this is this great thing. And it's all this story to do with like hardship and misogyny. And it's like, no, misogyny, whatever issues between men and women there are, they're very old and they're not going to stop and they're never going to end, and they exist on both ways. They go both ways, okay? But we've got some bigger issues that have nothing to do with our fucking genitals. Most of the problems out there have nothing to do with our genitals. In fact, if we're worrying about things to do with our genitals, it means that we're coming from a fucking Epicurean, luxurious standpoint and perspective that is blinding us to the actual problems. And it's like the equivalent of the global, everyone using their phone while they're driving. And this, you'll lose your license for that. But somehow if you drive our economy or our country or our culture or anything like that while fucking with your eyes on the phone or your eyes on something frivolous, you get celebrated. Because it's very hard to say the damaging idea. It's very hard to be like, hey, listen, I know we're all having a great time, but we've really got to look at this because otherwise things are going to get worse. Shut up, dickhead. Shut up, you fucking square. And yeah, I just think we're in a position, and it's like, I'll keep saying it and you'll probably keep ignoring it, and that doesn't end well usually. And I think the thing is, it's like, if it does happen and you all find yourself in the wild, you will be hunted by people like me and you will stand no chance at all. You will be dispatched and your blood will be sacrificed to the fucking earth, because you're like battery chickens. You do not actually exist here. You are temporary. Unless we all get together and figure out how to fucking like reconnect connection with the actual world into our cultural, into our legal, into our systems of governance. And this is what we hold up in other cultures that we've dispossessed. And we need to find it in our own and recognize it and reintegrate it back in. And I hope that makes sense. Okay?